Tonight's presentation is a combination. It is part one, helping new members with website sign up. And then part two is the open discussion. This was inspired directly by a question from a participant at the last one. The event format tonight will be, as mentioned, this presentation on that topic, and Ellen Eno will be offering that. I'm very pleased. This is the first time that we're actually collaborating on the slideshow versus the presentation and discussion later. This will also include a brief question and answer period for 10 to 12 minutes. Each participant will have an opportunity for 1 to 2 minutes, and then we will need to move on to the next one. There's a lot to do tonight, so we've got an active timer tonight. We certainly appreciate that. Part two is an open discussion on any topic. And this is something I want to be really clear about. Part one is really on the topic that we talked about, and then extending from there as well. Part two really is about anything that you want to ask in Pathways. Matter of fact, if you're a beginner and you feel like you've gotten what you wanted out of part one, you could literally say thank you and head out. Or if you want to see what comes up in the open discussion, it could be advanced topics, it could be beginning topics, and as well, there could be an opportunity if you have maybe a problem with Pathways in general, you just want to express this. It would be our intention to listen and be supportive, but not necessarily try and solve it for tonight. It really is about two things in that regard, which is one, the opportunity to express, and two, it's going to lead to future webinar topics. And those questions that we can't answer tonight, we've just heard from our club growth director that he would like to make a special effort to get that up to Toastmasters International. So it's a new thing we're doing. We're hoping it's going to provide value. This time I'd like to introduce our presenter, Ellen Eno. Ellen's bio: in the paid employment, Ellen Eno has been everything from a clerical assistant to library technician to ticket seller and political consultant. In the volunteer work, she was a volunteer coordinator, a trainer, campaign manager, fundraiser, and has done various officer roles in Toastmasters. Since her retirement, she has redoubled her focus on training the next generation of leaders. But Ellen knows that rocky beginnings sometimes cause people to discontinue learning and growing with their hands up, saying, I don't know what to do. Our collective goal tonight is to get Toastmasters started in Pathways and have a more positive start to their education journey through Toastmasters. Please help me welcome Ellen Eno. Let's give her a hand.
Good evening, Toastmasters. I want to welcome everyone tonight and congratulate you each on choosing Toastmasters. Unlike taking a class and going to training, afterwards, you forget what you learned. The mission of a Toastmasters club is to provide a mutually supportive, positive learning environment in which each member may practice oral communication and leadership skills, which in turn foster the self-confidence and personal growth that we all need in today's workplace and marketplace. Growth for so many people is a gradual process. Thus, Toastmaster Club meets weekly most of the time. The goal today is to help each of you gain access to your Toastmasters International account. When you join Toastmasters, you will get an email very much like this. Once your club has inputted your information, how many of you remember getting this kind of email a long, long time ago? I see hands. You can also go to Reaction Key and raise your hand that way. So open the browser and remember to go to toastmasters.org. That's an S. When you get to this lovely website, you're going to go to login. Didn't see it? Well, there it is, login, right there, okay? If it's your first time logging in, scroll down so that you get to first time logging in. You see that? Okay, excellent. Then it'll ask, you're going to get an email and it'll ask you to reset your password. Pretty straightforward process. So many of us have gone through this for work, for employment. The first time we ever have to sign into our email accounts or the LAN at work to do our job. Once you get in, okay, I want to point out that you're heading for, and you can see that it's your account because it says welcome. Okay. Now, this is the next part that's really important. And by the way, I strongly recommend either write down your password or make sure you save it in the web browser. When I started Toastmasters, I'm just going to say this. Even though I'm Zoom Master, you won't believe it. 15 years ago, I forgot to write down my password and I had to do the whole process all over again. Pathways in Toastmasters, there are 11 different paths. And how are you supposed to know which path to go to? So let's talk about that. Once you're in, I'm going to recommend that you open up Pathways and that you go to choose a path. Once you get into there, the next thing you're going to see is selecting your language preference. And as I do that, I want to make sure that everyone here understands not all of these languages are in every path yet. Okay, English is in every path, but not all of these languages are. So Chinese, Korean, not necessarily. Japanese, no. Once you've selected your language, you're scrolling on down and you need to decide how would you like to access your materials? Are you going to be online or do you want it printed? Please, please notice that the printed is $25 more, okay? But who should select digital versus printed? You actually can click on the plus and get a drop-down menu and it will explain much more to you. But I strongly recommend in Pathways that you select digital because there's so much on the digital platform that you will not receive in the printed version. And what are those things? Some of the paths have videos. You will not get it in printed format. And the videos in some paths are crucial to understanding what the path and the project is doing. It's also cheaper. I like going the cheaper route. Okay, so select digital, and you have to select digital to take the assessment. That's the next thing I strongly recommend, that you take the online assessment right here, the online assessment, okay? Now, the online assessment, unfortunately, select English. Once you've taken that online assessment, it'll come up with recommendations for your path. But even though it says, Ellen, gosh, you really should be in all the leadership tracks of Pathways, I actually selected humor for one of my paths because I'm horrible at humor. As you can tell by tonight, I actually planned out humor for this presentation. Whatever your path, you're going to then click on Paths and Learning. And I'm going to show you my paths. So I have persuasive influence and I have engaging humor. And for all of the Toastmasters that are worried about confidentiality, I've worked in politics too long. If I say anything in public, I better be willing to let it be seen. So I believe in transparency, and thus you get to see what I'm up to. Engaging humor and influences. You have level 1 through 5. And I chose to show you engaging humor so that you can see what starting a path looks like. You'll have to do an icebreaker, do the evaluation and feedback. When you click on when you look at the top, it'll show you the minimum projects required to complete level 1, and it'll tell you that I've completed 2. Okay. If I haven't activated an item yet, activate will show. As I'm working on a path, launch is what shows. So if I need to finish up level 1, for instance, I would go to launch. But here's the nice thing, guys. Once I finish a path, I get a nice little check mark that is completed. Once I've finished a project, within a level, such as icebreaker, I get a lovely check mark, and I know that I've completed that. I get a check mark for the evaluation, and that's completed. I still need to finish research and presenting. On persuasive influence, I wanted to show you what it looks like when you get up there in your paths, okay? So let me go back. Notice all of my lovely check marks that I've completed level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and I'm working on level 5. And it says, I need to do one of these elective projects. Wow, that's a lot to choose from. And David may be chuckling because I actually started methodically clicking through all of these, reading the paths to see which one I really wanted to do. And sometimes, Toastmasters, yeah, you're going to do that. It's okay. It really is. It really doesn't matter, I have to say, that if you do 2 of the electives. More power to you. You only need 1, but it doesn't matter. Once you've completed level 5, you'll get a pathways completion, and there's a few steps you have to do. But Dave later on is going to explain that in other future pathways labs. I'm just getting you started, and I just want to get you tasting it, smelling the achievement and wanting to get to level 5 because I know you can. So I'm teasing you with my persuasive influence that I'm almost there, my fellow Toastmasters. And when I get there, I plan to buy myself a proficiency pin because that's what you can get once you complete a path. But I've got a hint for my fellow Toastmasters. If you're sneaky and evil like Evil Ellen, here's what you can do, oh my friends. This membership pen costs $8. Guess what I did? Any guesses? Any guesses out there?
Convince your club.
That's right, Jim. I got my club to put it in the club budget this year to buy these proficiency pins. And I'm going to get one for free. So if your club has not set its budget yet, hint all you can and get one of these pathways proficiency pins. Because it's always nice when your club does a educational recognition within the club meeting. It encourages others to continue down their path. You will inspire other members to get their paths done. So fellow Toastmasters, even though I'm nowhere near a light, I'm going to say, I want to welcome you to your educational journey through Toastmasters pathways. David, back to you.
Let's give a hand to Ellen. Thank you so much. I wasn't sure. I was having some technical issues, so pardon me if I missed it. Did you talk about how to choose a path when you do, once you learn how to create your Toastmasters International account, did you review how a person selects a path?
I glossed over it.
And could
So
you encapsulate that one time if you don't mind?
when you go through the assessment, and I do recommend each of us encourage new members to go through the assessment, it will give you about 3, if not more, recommendations of which path. You can click on each one and read up more about each path and then select a path. Even now, you can go to Toastmasters International and read over the paths and even skip the assessment and just pick your path. So that is an option. I'm an old Toastmaster and a retiree, so I wanted to get my full money's worth and try out that assessment and see what it thought. And it was actually very accurate for what I've done in the past. And if I were still working, it would be a wonderful thing. But in retirement, I wanted to learn how to do humor. I've got the facial expressions down, just not the words.
Okay.
Thank you. And back to you, Lori.
Okay,
Well,
can I add a comment here real quick?
Okay.
I heard feedback early on in Pathways when people would do that self-assessment and it would recommend the 3 paths, and people would rail at that and they would say, oh, I'm not interested in any of those 3. So they would pick a different one. And then they would get into it and they'd say, well, gosh, I don't really care for this path. So let me go back and look at those other ones again. And I heard feedback that many people said, yes, the paths that were recommended based on the self-assessment were spot on. And in my case, I got visionary communications as my primary one. And I said, oh, crud, I don't want to do that. And then I thought, well, maybe that's the one I really need. So that's the one I've been working through, and I'm on level 4 now. I haven't been doing it diligently, but I'm working through it. But anyway, the assessment from the feedback I got has been pretty good. Okay, I'll stop now.
I agree.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I was thinking about that in terms of just what it recommended. It seemed to fit well.
Q&A is closed, and now part 2 is coming up. So I will hand the control back to our Toastmaster.
And to Ellen for doing an absolutely fabulous job, and Lori facilitating our discussion. Absolutely amazing. We are fast, fun, and furiously progressing through here. As mentioned, this is the open discussion section. I'm going to hand control to Lori to be sifting through the comments.
We have a question here. In Basecamp, looking at your progress towards completing a level in Pathways, what is the difference in the icons? So looking at your progress towards completing a level in Pathways, what is the difference in the icons in Basecamp?
Who was it that asked the question if, in fact, someone is comfortable with that? Amy, okay, very good. When you are talking about this level 1 progress in Pathways, have you at this point gone to toastmasters.org and then clicked on Pathways, and then you've gone to your Basecamp? Is that where you're at right now with your question, Amy?
Hi, Dave. Yeah, that is my question. I have completed even just level 1, so I'm somewhat familiar, and I'm also VPE for my club, so I'm helping members with their journey, getting familiar and whatnot. but I myself get a little confused. And I think Ellen actually showed this in maybe a slide
Okay.
of her presentation where it shows it's right next to where the check marks show you're done.
Yes.
But there's also icons down a list that show it's a folder, I think, for each project. And I
Okay.
think at the bottom, it looks like something different. It's a yellow icon, and I can't tell what that's trying to indicate. And as VPE, I actually go in and look at the member who has submitted a request
Yes.
to
Yes.
evaluate that pathways, to just see if I can validate and see if as I become familiar. So I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Well, I think again, this is great that it's an open discussion because we're trying to get to the heart of your issue. The thing that comes to mind is I'm hearing that as VPE, you actually have logged in as the Basecamp manager, I think is where you're at with this. Is that right? Okay, great. Which is different than a Basecamp account for a particular member, although they're very similar and designed as such. The thing that I would put out there, I haven't tried to analyze the specific icons. I think there is some logic to the icons, but what it is, the way that it's laid out is it's supposed to be fairly identical to the member's own Basecamp. So a VPE coming in, if they know how to navigate their own Basecamp, then they can do it as a Basecamp manager, accessing this information. And I will say this, I can't remember if you said, yeah, you said level 1. So say if you logged into as a Basecamp manager, you're looking at, we'll say, John Doe's information. You've clicked on Paths in Learning, which it sounds like you understand that. So you're in John's Paths in Learning. And then you see you have levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You click on level 1. And sorry if like this a little bit of whiplash for other people, but I'm trying to be specific to your question. So you've clicked on level 1, and then you will see the required projects. You'll see the icebreaker, you'll see evaluation and feedback, you'll see researching and presenting. You'll either see or not see a check mark next to each one of those projects. And the one that does not, or the ones that do not have a check mark, are the ones that need further attention. There is not in other words, like evaluation and feedback involves 3 presentations. The one that you give just to look for general feedback. The second one is where you apply the feedback you were given. And then the third one is once you've given an evaluation. At this time, there is no specific way to tell how far they've progressed in their evaluation and feedback process. It really is a check mark if you've completed the project as opposed to all the speeches within it. Now, it just so happens that the icebreaker and researching presenting, both of those only involve 1 speech. So as soon as you're done with that, you can then check it off. But evaluation and feedback does not offer that particular feature. I don't know if that gets to the bottom of what you were trying to ask, but I don't know off the top of my head precisely what a given icon is. But that is the design of looking at a given member's paths in learning as Basecamp manager. Any follow up on that, Amy?
It mostly answered my question as I look at my own pathways, just as an individual member, not as a VPE. I see I'm in the middle of level 2, and I see the check marks. Then I see something that says that is not checked, so that's my next task. It's something about introduction to Toastmasters mentoring, and it says launch instead of evaluate. So clearly that's my next task.
Yes.
Below that it looks like a yellow folder, and it says level 2 completion. That's not, does that just level completion? That's not that just means that.
Okay. Are you wondering about that? Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah.
Okay, this is why it's open discussion. Exactly. Because I'll tell you, as a Pathways proponent last year, my hardest job was deciphering questions, not so much answering questions. And because that's what's so interesting is the dialogue. So now that I understand your question more, the way that Cornerstone On Demand, which is the service that offers us this Basecamp environment is they look at path completion as you would a project, but it doesn't open up as a possibility to do anything until in fact you've completed the other actual projects within there. So for level 1, you would have needed to have checked off icebreaker, evaluation and feedback, researching and presenting, and then that opens up, and then the member can then click on that as they would complete a project, if you will. They're given some instructions about pending approval and all this, and then that gets shot over to the Basecamp manager, who then can approve or deny or make suggestions. And then once this all takes place, then they will, once you've approved it as Basecamp manager, they will get that check mark, and you'll have access to then see their certificate, send it to them if you want to. Does that address your question now? I think it does.
Totally does. Thank you very much. Your prior overview was helpful too, so it wasn't for naught. So thank you.
Great question. Thank you, Amy. This is what we need to be doing. This is exactly what I was envisioning for this event. Wonderful. And Lori, I'll defer to you.
Thank you. We do have another question, and I see we've got also the timer light going on as well. So I'll ask the question here. Daniel says, I'm at the ground level of 2 clubs. Is there a printed or PDF reference that I can forward to a new member and potentially new members, perhaps with the project and first few projects? And then Jim put in a link to a Pathways overview, which I just opened up. But is there any other materials that we can offer new members and potential new members coming into a club that shows them an overview or where they need to go next, or first or second with Pathways?
I love this question. And again, it looks like we have input coming in, and I'm going to absolutely defer to that. Lori, who had their hand up first? It looks like we had
I think it was Carol. If I'm wrong, please forgive me, but I did.
It was me, yeah.
It's in my...
Carol, would you like to help contribute to this conversation?
Sure. If you go to where it handles new members and resources on the Toastmaster International website, one of the things it's got as an example of what Pathways is like is a level 1 icebreaker. They offer it open for free. All you have to do is click in it, and it's literally the whole level. It's the level 1 project. So they can just simply go there. I'd have to find the link again, but it's right there, open on the Toastmaster International website for new members. And you can just open it up, and it's the level 1.
That's good. That is excellent. Carol, can you put some kind of a link that Daniel could click on?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it now.
I'm logging out of Toastmasters, so now I'm not logged in because the members I have will not have logins yet. And I'm going to go to Pathways and accessible materials, maybe.
Accessible is more like if they're sight impaired, things like that. That's actually something different.
Okay, so where would I go if I'm not logged in?
Look under new members, education.
Where's new members?
Under education.
Resources, I think. Or education.
Well, there's
under resources.
Mm-hmm.
Resources. Okay, and then where?
What I suggest to Daniel, what I suggest to a lot of folks starting off in Toastmasters is type this into your Google search engine, toastmasters.org/pathways. And when you get the search up, Google does the search, it'll look for the PDF document or a web page describing Pathways that is specifically on toastmasters.org. I find this method of search the fastest and easiest way to get to documents on Toastmasters International. So if you were interested, for instance, in the DTM form, you could do the same thing.
Okay, so I got there and now I'm in Welcome to Pathways. That's great.
Okay, where you can find it is on that overview page.
Okay,
You
on the
have to
bottom.
go down about almost to the bottom.
Break
And
the
you'll
ice.
find where it says sample your first
English.
project.
English, but it still isn't something I can send them.
Go to, if you click on Pathways and the menu that comes up under that, the first item is Learn More. I just clicked on that, and if you scroll down, it starts out, where will pathways take you? You just scroll down, it talks about the 11 paths, and at the bottom of the page is sample your first project, break the ice.
Right.
So that's how you go straight to it, and I just put the link to that page in the chat.
Denise, would you like to contribute?
Yes, I would. I used to be a Pathways guide when Pathways first came out, and we had to figure everything out to tell everybody else how to do it. So, log into Basecamp, Daniel. Go to your Basecamp platform page and go to the home page where it says Paths in Learning, Speech Evaluations, Tutorial, and Resources. Click on that. Now, dear old TI has changed things around since I was a Pathways guide. Of course, you have all your evaluations. You have tons of videos if you're a video person. They have tons of information on here. And at some point, I know Ellen put into chat the navigator that helps to break down the projects. As you can see, my page is still loading, and there's more and more resources that you can go to. Now, I personally, from being a Pathways guide, actually have the PDF file of all the paths with its electives and its breakdown. And I recently, when I was looking at persuasive speaking, because I was looking at selecting my next free path, I opened that up and expanded it out and looked at it. So they still have that, only they have the extra path on it. Plenty of resources on here. Pick your language. And you can continue going down to the bottom. They'll have plenty of resources here. I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, so I lost you at some point there.
Yeah.
I'm at tutorials and resources, right?
Yes. And there's tons of videos.
Okay, okay, here we go. Okay, I found it.
Yep. And lots of resources. Of course, you want to narrow it down to your language group because they have it in multiple languages. They have the whole evaluation forms and everything underneath there is, in more than one spot. I find they've duplicated themselves a couple of times, but that's because people can't always find it in one place, so they put it someplace else.
All right. Well, I'll dig through there, see if I can find what I'm looking for.
I just believe Ellen has got her hand raised. So, Ellen, do you want to go ahead?
I just wanted to mention that in the chat, I put the navigator in there. Navigator not only explains a lot about pathways, but it also explains meeting roles and officer roles, which might be good for new folks.
Mr. Toastmaster.
Great. Thank you so much, Lori. Wow. Big hand to our leadership, our participants. It just really could not happen without everybody here, and that includes the team. We have Carol Schultz, which is kind of the Zoom leader. We have Lori, who's been helping us in moderation today, our presiding officer. We have, of course, our wonderful presenter, Ellen. We have Denise helping us. And then finally, IU. It's just been wonderful. All of your contribution. One more hand for everybody. And if you have further comments, I just want to say as well, or interest, as a matter of fact, we have a program. It's something we're trying. It's called Train the Trainer. And it's where we collaborate, just like Ellen and I did today. We had several phone conversations about what material is appropriate for this series, and it's a collaborative process. There was so much more that she wanted to include, and we both found that really it's not so much about what should we put in, it's about what can we leave in, because you need to take out about 90%. So that's really fun. If anybody's interested, let me know in the email. Finally, general support for Pathways, please reach out to my email. As a matter of fact, somebody that's good at typing, could you please put my email address in there? Please reach out to me anytime. Ellen, you're probably very good at that. We do have Learning Lab monthly Pathways sessions. They're always on Wednesdays from 7 to 8. The future dates are right here, which are listed. I'm not going to read them all off. As well, when I send you the link for the video, I've done a few slides. You'll see my slides, which are just a few, but this will also include these dates. If Ellen would like to share her slides, I'll kind of leave that up to her. And I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure. And there's a quote that I think might be the theme for all of these, which is from Jim Rohn. It's learn to be thankful for what you already have while you pursue all that you want. It's been a pleasure. At this time, I return control of the meeting to our presiding officer, Lori Anderson.